Hi, Kasey Thompson here. This is my intro story, a little bit about myself. So I've been a businessman the past 25 years. I've started businesses, I've sold businesses, built several from the ground up, and that's kind of what I've done. And been pretty successful financially. I've hit every goal and fulfilled every dream that I had financially. And then I realized a few years ago that even though I'd hit all my financial goals, I really wasn't happy. That it really left me kind of empty. And I thought for sure once I hit these goals, once I was financially set, that I would be 100% happy and that that's everything I ever wanted. But it just kind of left me empty. And I just realized that probably wasn't the whole point of the purpose of being here. Um, then a few years ago, I had a real interesting vision, if you will. During the middle of the day, I closed my eyes and I vividly remember watching my life pass before me. It was almost like a slow motion. I could see myself as a child going through school and experiencing different things. And I could experience things that I had done that, or I hurt someone's feelings, or I did something nice for someone, or just all these different experiences that I had in my life, and I was sick to my stomach. I realized there's a lot of things I did in my life, both businessly, professionally, with my kids, just with different people growing up, that I'd made a lot of mistakes, and that I treated a lot of people not as good as I wish I had, and I was embarrassed, and it just crushed me. Um, During that same time frame, I watched and thought about three near death experiences I had as a kid. I kind of buried those because I didn't really want to talk about them. It just felt kind of awkward. Didn't know how people would accept it. But I always knew it was a little bit different. The first near death experience I had, I was about fourth grade. I was down in southern Utah with some friends and relatives of mine, and we're riding bicycles, and we're going down this really steep hill. And I told my friends, I said, hey, I can go down this hill and not even use the brakes. And they bet me that I couldn't. So, of course, being the person I was going to prove to them that I could. So I started going down this hill, and I realized halfway through down the hill that I didn't have my feet on the brakes and that I wasn't going to make the turn and that I was going to go flying right off a cliff. And at that moment, I recall um, leaving my body. I recall leaving my body and looking down and seeing my body on a bicycle heading right towards this cliff. And then I realized, and then as I was watching this, I saw the bike go off the cliff onto a building and then land on the building, then land in the middle of the road. And I saw people coming and running towards my body and checking on me to see if I was okay. And then I recall later going back into my body, and I'd been unconscious for a few days, and I finally came back through. But I remember thinking over my life, going, that was really bizarre. There's no way. I left my body and I could see this all happen, and just couldn't imagine how that happened. Then, about 2 years later, I was in sixth grade, and I was riding the family four wheeler or three wheeler at the time. I'm kind of old, I guess, so we had three wheelers back then. And I was riding the family three wheeler, and I was going as fast as I could around this baseball diamond. And I had it floored in fifth gear, and I was going as fast as I could. And the front tire on a three wheeler hit this big hole. And just as I hit this hole, the whole back in it started going into a flip. And I recall just as I hit that, thinking, "Oh no, I'm in big trouble." And I again, my my spirit, if you want to call it that, left my body, and I watched it from above in slow motion. The three wheeler going front end or back end over front end, and ran right into a school building. And my body had been thrown. And I remembered laying there, and I remember my brother was in the area, and he came and checked on me, and I watched all of this. And then a few days later, I come to. I was I was knocked out, and a few days later, I kind of wake up startled, wondering what happened. And that happened. And then the third near-death experience I had, I was a senior in high school, and I had been out hunting with my family, and I had to get back for football practice. And I was late, and I was tired. I hadn't slept that night. And so I was driving home to get to football practice, and I remember putting the cruise control on about 85 because I figured how fast I had to go to make it there on time. And I was going about 85 miles an hour, and I fell asleep while I was driving. And I recall the car was going, and I remember just not being in the car, and I'm watching the car as it's slowly veering off the road, and then it hits an embankment and flips around at 85 miles an hour. And I'm watching this whole thing from above and thinking, whoever's in that car, there's no way they're going to make it. And the car just went to this embankment, did a couple 360s, and stopped right in the middle of the road. And I remember watching all this, and then I heard this loud noise, and the semi truck was coming right at the car, and a guy was just pressing his horn. And he locked up his brakes and pulled right up beside of me and jumped out of his semi truck and started running towards the car. And I was thinking to myself as I'm looking down this picture, watching the semi truck, watching the car, then I realized I'm the one that's in the car. That's my body in that car. And suddenly, as I think that thought, I go back into my body, and I hear a guy scream. And all of a sudden, I come to him in my body, and a guy's screaming at me. And he's like, "Are you okay? Are you okay? You ran off the road." And I remember being startled, thinking, "Wow, this is bizarre." And so those three experiences kind of changed my life because I used to see things a little differently. Like I would look at people and I could see different lights around them and different. At times I would just see like different orbs, but I didn't want to say anything because I didn't want to be the weird guy and say too much. Even though my grandmother, she was a clairvoyant, and she um, would talk to me, and she would see different people appear to her. And when she was going to pass away, we would talk, and she'd have different family members come visit her, let her know that it was going to be pretty close to the time she was going to go. And I've always believed her. I thought it was a little bizarre, but I always believed her. And on the day that she passed away, we'd gone down to Utah to visit her, and she had already written who was going to speak at her funeral. And she was waiting for my son, who was about 6 months at the time, to see him before she passed away. And she had called and said, I've seen all the grandkids and kids, and the only one I hadn't seen is your son. So I'm going to wait till he gets here before I move on, before I pass away, move on. So as we showed up, we spent some time, took some photos together. And my parents and I, as we were getting ready to leave to go get some lunch, she said, this will be the last time you see me. I'll be leaving. And my mother, of course, was like, no, you'll be fine. We'll be back in an hour. Just going to grab some lunch. You'll be totally fine. And we left the hospital. And within 10 minutes, the hospital called us and let us know that our grandmother had passed. And she was always communicating beyond. So I knew that that was something, that was a possibility. So a couple of years ago, I decided, after having this life reveal, that I was going to get out of the business world and try to make a difference in the world and really focus more on the gifts that I have. So I started, meditating and really working on my gifts. And I've got to the point where I can shut down my physical body, shut down my brain, shut down my eyes, and I can switch into my spirit side. And I've got to the point where I communicate with angels, and I can see everybody's angels, and I communicate with my spirit team, and I've been able to communicate with them, get different answers, and share those with people. And it's been awesome. And I've always wondered over the last few years, anytime I go somewhere and I'm around a medium, they'll always come up to me and they'll say, so how long have you been a clairvoyant? And I just kind of laughed it off, didn't think much about it. But now I understand why, because people know that I know and that I can see beyond. So every day I spend a few hours and I communicate with my spirit team. And it's interesting because as I look at this world, it's like having the best that I can say is like a projection right in front of me. Um, and as I see through my regular eyes, I can see uh, spirit. I can see everyone's guardian angels. I can see energy, people's auras. I can see this world just kind of, this physical world dissolve, and I can see beyond. And the colors of what I call the energy world, or some people call heaven or the other side, is bright purples and pinks and blues, just colors that don't exist in this world. And it's been pretty amazing. So um, I get several people asking me different questions, as I'm able to communicate with my spirit team on the other side, and I try to answer as many of those questions that I can. So I decided to start this YouTube video where each week I'll come on and I'm going to take people's answers, or questions I should say, off of my website, which is askKaseyThompson.com. So it's askKaseyThompson.com. Just go there, and any questions you have about the other side, put your questions in there, and I'll pick a few of those each week, and I will communicate with my spirit team and answer those questions that you might have. So I look forward to next week. We'll get back together and talk then.